his butt.
Wait a minute, Doc.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Hold up just a minute. This is Chase, and I'm joined once again by John Robinson. How are you, John?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're fresh off War Games. How do you think it went?
Oh, it was fun. We couldn't get enough shit talking or praise, which it deserves both. But we got plenty in it. It was great.
Is that going to be moved into the staff picks at Videodrome?
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah,
kind of highlight that thing.
You can go back and catch the episode we did on War Games. John was a great guest. We thought we'd bring him back again with years of expertise in the video rental realm. So I wanted to bring up an interesting topic. I want to talk to you about the life and death of the video rental store. It's near and dear to anyone who is a millennial, right? Growing up, it holds a special place in my heart for sure, and I know it does yours as well. Yeah. I guess tell me a little bit about the heyday of a video rental store and what it meant to the youth at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because it was so ubiquitous at a certain point, you know, and just seemed like a thing that would be there forever. But I guess the one thing, people that come in Videodrome who haven't been in a video store ever sometimes or haven't in years will instantly be like nostalgic. Yeah. And that's sort of the first reaction. And then often people will be like, oh, it's like Blockbuster. To which we're like, yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. But people think of video stores as basically either Blockbuster, one of the big chains, Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. But really, Blockbuster took over. It was already like a thriving mom and pop industry, even by the early 80s, even in the War Games era. And so they were all pretty diverse and could be as eccentric or as boring as the owners.
Ours was Hometown Video.
Nice.
Yeah, we had one right up the road. We also had a movie gallery, too.
Right, movie gallery. I forgot that one. Yeah, that's another big chain. But at the time, sure, cool people, cinephiles went to Blockbuster, and in many cases, the movie gallery or the Hollywood Video or the Blockbuster was the only thing in town. But we sort of recoil. I sort of recoil because Blockbuster was the enemy, you know? It was like they censored movies. They had very shallow catalogs. And like instead of like indie queer movies, or they would have a section called alternative lifestyles. So it was all very conservative culturally and corporate. So Videodrome, we never thought that we would outlast a Blockbusters there, or anybody else. It's just crazy. But I think another thing people forget, besides it being a primarily independent business network or world, and not just a corporate behemoth everywhere, is that they were for neighborhoods. Like a video store was like the same as a video store could only survive if there was parking, if there was people, if it was central to where they ran errands, where they lived. And so they served neighborhoods basically. And if they were a Blockbuster, maybe you could get them to order something special. Yeah. But mostly it was just very monoculture. But the mom and pop place, might have The Curtain, or they might have porn, or they might have strange straight-to-video horror, SOV horror, and things like that that's so sought after now. And it was just a much more, I guess, pluralistic thing, that it was, hyper-local from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Right. So you created a kind of a friendly neighborhood vibe where everybody kind of, like, that was your cheers at the time, I guess, as a teenager, right?
Well, as a teenager, I was not that into movies. It was like right when I turned 20, and then I went to discovered a really great video store in this neighborhood, actually, called Movies Worth Seeing, that was at the end of Lanier Boulevard, where it meets University. And it was just had stuff like I had never heard of before, and that's what got me in. Was what I think of as mentors. These guys, Sam and Chris, that worked there, would just be like, "Here, take this tape home," and then it'd be like an obscure Orson Welles movie, or minor Kurosawa movie, or classic Hollywood movie that I had never heard of, and I just trusted them. I might not love it, but I realized that it was important, the things that they would give me. And yeah, it wasn't like a hangout bar kind of situation, but it was like really reliable. So anyways, I worked at a restaurant then, and I was burned out and begged them for a job. And then I ended up working there for like 6.5 years, and it was great. And then Matt Booth opened Videodrome, and he was like a friend of a friend. So you have to think, like, at that time, that wasn't that big of a deal to have a competing video store opening a mile away. It was like, oh, well, they're Videodrome. It's like mostly like Hong Kong and cult stuff and gory horror. And that's not what we do.
Very art housey kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, whereas movies we're seeing was more like foreign movies and classic movies. But it was just a juggernaut. I mean, the catalog was incredible. So they all sort of played off of each other. Movies we're seeing closed, I think, around 2011. But I had long since, I had another job, and then I ended up working at Videodrome around 2000 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, being a horror fan, like, I know about, like, the back catalog of, like, a lot of horror films, especially in the 80s when horror was at its, like, feverish peak.
Yeah.
Everything went to home media because it was a way to bypass, like, going through theaters, and, of course, you could get, like, the NC-17 stuff just on the shelves in video stores.
Right.
Like, you could get, like, this Tom Savini special effects movie that just has a dinosaur in it. Like, you could find anything. What I find fascinating about the video store is, like, a lot of those movies that, like, came out on VHS has never made it down to the other forms of media.
Yeah, still. Even now that it's like a golden age of restorations, and so many have, there's so many haven't at the same time.
And as time has gone on, you still work for one. Do you still feel like it's like a preservation?
Absolutely.
Of time?
Yeah. Well, of film. Yeah, I think of it as like a public library or a private library, obviously. I feel like the goal, at least for Videodrome, is to be like a cross between a library where certain things are always there, but then we also listen to customers, get things customers want, and an archive. Something disappears from streaming, happens every day. We get new customers because they're like, I was watching this movie and now I went back to Netflix and it's not there. And so, yeah, I feel like it serves as just like entertainment, but also like a deeper library to give people access to the whole history of world cinema.
Yeah,
to the best of our abilities.
And it is a shame that we're losing that media by the moment. Just a movie that I remember from my childhood that Disney tries to bury under time is The Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can find it. There's no Blu-ray release of it, but it's one of those things of...
Yeah, the Disney Vault. Yeah.
Yeah, we're losing it, and Disney won't re-release it at all because they're ashamed of it.
Sure.
So it just like stuff like that from my childhood that I'll never be able to like capture again, other than like illegal streaming on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just no way to experience those movies.
Yeah, I mean, counterpoint, neither is like a 30-year-old DVD, but that's what we can do. You know what I mean? Is like, that's...
we take what we can get.
Yeah, that's the best way it's available. Might have been out of print for 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But people are able to access it.
I know a lot of people talk about streaming as what killed the rental stores, but do you think it's more than that? Do you think there's a lot that goes into that instead of just like chalking it up as this was the death and then we're moving on and then we're just left that to history?
Absolutely. I think that's an oversimplification. I remember in the 90s, everything that came around that was new, we were like, oh, that's it. We're done. Like satellite TV, cable TV, obviously, IMAX, all of these reasons not to go to, rent a video, a pay-per-view. There was always something that was new, that was a way of watching movies at home that didn't involve a disc or a tape. And then for whatever reason, people would still come. And, whether it was their routine or they liked the quality better.
Yeah.
What streaming did was kill the infrastructure for video stores. In other words, like the wholesalers that sell like our little tags that we have at Videodrome, the little pockets they go in, and the cases, the disc goes in to go out for rent.
Yeah.
Like that all collapsed when Blockbuster decided that it wasn't interested in streaming.
Yeah.
And so, along with the corporate ones falling because of Netflix and others, the sort of infrastructure and the ability to get wholesale product, that all that sort of collapsed, and that killed a lot of mom and pop stores,
Yeah.
a lot of independent video stores.
Which is, it's a shame because we talk about it too. Like, to your point, the guys that were handing you stuff, it's like, that's what I love about going to Videodrome. And for anybody out there that's not familiar, Videodrome is one of the last standing video rental stores. And we're so fortunate enough to have Videodrome in Atlanta and able to go and hang out and, catch you guys over there on the counter and you guys curate our weekend if we need to. But that's the vibe that I miss too. There was that to the mom and pop stores. It's like there was that community and education too.
Yeah, we think about clerks recommending movies, but really so much of it is customers like you going to sort of using, what was your hometown video?
Yeah, hometown video, yeah.
Yeah, like they probably weren't like connoisseurs of straight to video horror. But you could find the things in there that you wanted, and then they'd be like, "Oh, well, that's renting. Maybe we'll get this other thing." Yeah. So much of it is the customers, because they have access to walk around and pick things up and look at them, read about them, and make decisions. So yeah, it's all a conversation.
I know there's one Blockbuster left in Oregon. I keep waiting for the death of it, but it's still there in Bend, right? It's still standing. Do you know where Videodrome stands? Do you know how many movie rental stores are left?
Well, during the pandemic, Family Video closed. That was a B tier chain, but they were everywhere, like in smaller towns that didn't have Blockbusters, and some were individually owned, some were part of the chain. I think at that time there was like 600 or something, and I want to say the last thing I read was it was like under 300.
Yeah.
In the United States. Canada still has a lot. Places that have big land masses and not great connectivity broadband-wise. Australia, Canada, that's still a popular thing. They're still closing all the time, but there's more than you would think, I guess.
I know that they did that big push with the documentary, The Last Blockbuster, and everyone's like, "Oh, there's one left." And it's like, no, I see Videodrome over here. Like, it's just because it's not Blockbuster doesn't mean that it's like...
Yes. I hate how Blockbuster has become synonymous with the video stores, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, and I do hate that too, because like everyone will get, like, I saw the comments on that, and I went back and reread it before we recorded this episode on that documentary, and everyone's like, "Oh, I miss Blockbuster. I miss like the video. I miss the video rental store experience." I was like, we've got one, right here where you can go and support. You can go every now and again, and it's still the retro date night. Mm-hmm. You go pick up takeout over there in Inman Park, and then Virginia Highlands, and then you go to Videodrome and you fight over what you're going to rent, and then you go home and probably hate it. One of you hates it, and one of you loves it. Like,
sure, or
find something that inspires you.
No, I mean that goes kind of back to the neighborhood part that for example, in 2017 we changed our policy. All the rentals used to be 3 nights. And we thought, oh, God, so many of our regulars can't afford to live around here anymore. And they're moving further out. So we took the leap to 7-day rentals, which sounds like it's boring, whatever. But it was a big deal. Because we were like, oh, my God, nothing's ever going to be here. People are going to be mad all the time that everything's checked out. Yeah. But it worked out. And it attracted people from further away who thought that, well, I live in Woodstock, but I know if I have it for a week, I know I can come down here next weekend.
Yeah.
And then they'll come to like a plaza show and they kind of discover this whole sort of neat ecosystem that's formed between the plaza and the Terra and Videodrome, which is really just something I'm so grateful for. We are so fortunate to have that in our community. Plaza does amazing work, and the fact that it's still here and still going strong too.
Yeah. Like, oh my God. Like, it's sold out shows. It's hard to get in there sometimes. And it's weird what sells out too. I told you I recently went there for Freddy versus Jason on 35 millimeter, which is not, it's not the cinephile. Like, hey, everybody go see that. But that was huge, right? Packed out. Yeah. Like it's not a sold out show, but a lot of people there and enjoying it. And,
Yeah.
Either reliving their youth or discovering something schlocky and new.
Yeah, and how much more fun is it to watch it with a room full of people? It's just, it's such a cliche, but it's so true. I think of it every time I see a fun movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I thought I didn't like that movie so much, but seeing it with a crowd was a completely different experience.
So I always had this theory, and I think me and one of my friends came up with this, and I think he inspired me to think about it a little bit more. How much do you stream? Like, I know
Personally?
Yeah.
We all stream, everybody that works at Videodrome. I have the Criterion channel just because it's so awesome and unbelievable and gets better and better, even though I have access to a lot of it, not all of it. And then I change around others like Hulu for TV shows.
So if you're ever going home and you're sitting there and I'm getting to a point, it's a long way around, but so you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I have time to watch something, right? I don't have like a lot of time, but I have something before I either go to bed or I have to go do something else. And you sit there, do you scroll at all through the streaming service?
All night.
And then you're like 45, 50 minutes in.
Yeah.
Do you ever correlate that feeling to being in the video rental store?
I feel like it's the opposite
Oh,
in
okay.
some way. I mean, yes, as an indecisive person, I'm indecisive in both ways.
So I kind of look at it as like my youth. So like if we went to movie gallery or hometown video, wherever we were going, we would go in and my mom would be like, you have 30 minutes. Or she would set a timer on it.
Smart woman.
Yeah. Yeah. She knew what she was doing. But I think in that time frame, I would search everywhere, look at every box, like because like it was your weekend if you were a kid, and if you picked something wrong, your weekend was screwed. Especially like if you were renting a video game and it was just and it predates the internet. I couldn't just pull out my phone and go, oh, what's the synopsis or what's going on here? Do people like this game? And so, like, it's the same thing with movies. It's like, if it was a bad movie, it wrecked your weekend.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time just sifting and turning over every rock, and I feel like that's kind of eked over into my my streaming because, like, I'm scrolling through, even though it's, we're not at DEFCON 1 here. We're, like, I could easily back out of it and start something else, but it's like that frame of mind of like connecting with something and knowing that I have to see this through.
No, that's interesting. It probably does correlate from person to person, like the same person who, although I feel like scrolling over the top or an over the top platform or an app is more universal. But if you're the kind of person who was as a kid like went through everything, then you're, every single box, then you're probably going to do the same sort of thing with streaming. That's interesting.
Yeah. He brought it up to me, and it's Leif, and Leif, and it's like he was the one that kind of like introduced me to that method, and I was like, okay. Like I was like, that's interesting, and then I thought more about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I think you're onto something. And then I'm like, now I believe it. I believe the theory now, and I think that's more or less with '90s kids. Because I talked to a lot of my friends, and they had the same circumstances. You had 30 minutes. You have 15 minutes. Because the blockbusters were huge.
Yeah.
And you talk about all the content and, like, the big category. Like, you can get lost in those things forever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like going to a library and looking for you're just like, I'm going to get a book
tonight.
Yeah. It's like, I know. You had to go in with a game plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if what you wanted is checked out, then it's like,
And then you had a backup plan.
Then you had plan B, exactly. But I say it's the opposite because I know lots of people, maybe it is a generational thing, but just give up. I mean, I do that. Like, I'm just like, okay, that was my entertainment tonight, was scrolling for an hour through everything.
I've done that a lot, and then go back to like something like YouTube and just like quick hitters until I fall asleep. And that's probably why my attention span's like a rodent.
Oh, or chicken or egg. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm the same way.
It's kind of been the death of it. How do you feel about streaming now that you've been in the video rental industry? And
I mean, I feel like I knew that the promise of streaming just at the time I thought it didn't seem possible to me. The promise of everything at your fingertips, any movie you want, just because I knew that licensing things and the curation wasn't there. Licensing windows always lapse. I didn't know it would be as bad and as atomized as it is now, meaning that, so a lot of the customers, first-time customers, will come into Videodrome and be like, I was looking for XYZ, and we couldn't find it streaming anywhere. And these are not obscure movies. You know, it might be like When Harry Met Sally, or like, which I don't know if that's real or not, but there's major things that will disappear off of streaming services, and then having to have, you know, you can buy it outright, which you don't really own, or there's you have to sign up for a subscription for something in order to watch it,
or they'll do that thing too where, like, especially being a horror fan, in October they pull everything off, so you have to rent it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so they'll pull the licensing agreements, and it's like, oh, I'm going to watch this shitty Friday the 13th movie because I'm in the mood to watch this in October, and I'll go to it, and it's like, oh, you have to rent it for $5-6 now, and it's like,
yeah,
convenient. This was streaming in September, but now in October, when I have the vibes to watch it, it's gone. So it's
yes, and also when there's something in the franchise coming up theatrically, or the very point where people are like, I need to go back and rewatch all the Halloweens. You know, there's the moment that they disappear because they pulled them all. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But
smart, but
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not like anti-streaming at all. I use it too, but there's just that's sort of it's not a library, you know. It's not there's not an effort to preserve film. It's things movies are bought in with bulk licenses, with the exception of things like Mubi and Criterion and some more specialized services. Movie history doesn't exist on the big ones either. Like HBO Max has this sort of pathetic Turner Classic Movies section where it's just like a couple dozen.
Casablanca.
Yeah, Casablanca. And so a video store hopefully will have like at least a good representation of any like era.
The education process is kind of lost too. Like, I don't think on streaming I'm discovering anything new. I think I'm just scrolling. And like at a video store, like I can count a lot of times where I discovered something new through the clerk or like people like you at Videodrome. That's like, hey, you like House?
Yeah.
Try this, and show me a list of things, and then like, oh wow, I would have never thought, and then it's a new movie I like, you know.
Yeah, and plus I feel like the sort of spatial aspect of it, of walking around holding something in your hand, and then even if it's not your mom saying 30 minutes, there's some time limit. And I discovered, even though I'm not paying for the rentals because I work there, but if I have a couple of Blu-rays sitting on my coffee table, I'm far more likely to watch those than remember what I bookmarked 2 weeks ago.
The queue gets too long.
It gets too long, just like the watch list, which should always be long. I feel like that's okay.
Yeah,
but
we'll get to it before we die.
Yeah. Or it just means I think it's a sign that you're still intellectually curious if you have if you're constantly adding to your watch list.
That's a good point.
But I feel that, and customers say this too, that they feel like, okay, well, if I've rented it and I know I've got to get it back, I'm more likely to sit with it. And it looks better, sounds better than streaming, and there's no commercials.
Yeah, absolutely. The commercials alone, War Games, I wasn't able to make it out to Videodrome. Got busy, and I was like, I'm just going to stream it just out of convenience. Well, that convenience factor turned an hour and 40-minute movie into a 2 hour and 30-minute movie with all the commercials, and I was like, I should have just made the drive. I was like,
well, I might have had the disc at home, so you might have been disappointed. No, what was it on? What did you watch it on? Like Tubi?
I think Tubi, which is free. So
yeah, I mean Tubi is an exception.
I'd almost rather pay the $5 almost just to get my time back, because I always feel time is the most valuable thing that you have, and I waste a lot of it. But if you can save time, you can regenerate money. You can't regenerate time. So that extra 40 minutes was. And then I'm losing. It's
insulting, right?
Right, and I'm losing track of the movie.
Yeah, of course. You're distracted.
I'm distracted, and then in that movie, I don't want to watch these ads. So what am I doing? In 2025, I'm picking up my phone, and then I'm getting caught doom scrolling through Instagram on stuff that I don't need to. That I don't care about.
100%.
So I'd rather just follow all the way through. That's why I go to a theater, watch films in a theater. Turn your phone off.
It is, yeah, it is such a rewarding experience. Like, it's easy to imagine it's the same at home, and it just really isn't. It's
never the
It's
same.
so much more fun and so much more memorable if you can see something in a theater with a fun crowd.
And especially if you take it seriously in the theater. I'm so sick of seeing people in theaters now with their phones out. It's like, just disconnect. It's not going to kill you.
Oh, yeah, like in like megaplex or multiplexes, you mean?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
Yeah, and
it's
it's
unbelievable.
infiltrated Plaza a little bit too, and like it's just I think it's just the society we're in.
Yeah.
I went and saw a movie recently, and there was people in front of me just had their phone down and just like listening to Instagram and like scrolling
Are
through.
you fucking kidding
No,
me?
and I've seen it a lot, and it's I would say it's like, oh, I've seen it at that one theater, but I've seen it everywhere now.
Yeah.
it's not, it's
Like
obviously
North DeKalb, like, okay.
yeah, and
but-
it's like it's not as prominent in certain theaters, but if you look around next time you're in one,
no,
you'll catch at least somebody. Maybe somebody who's a friend of somebody dragged there.
yes.
But like you'll catch it, and it's just like, why are you here? You know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's crazy. The biggest problems we have at our screenings, which we really haven't recently, but when we started doing the 6 or 7 years ago, started doing Videodrome, it's been a problem showing like cult movies, especially at 9 o'clock, like drunk people or just people who imagine they're the star of Mystery Science Theater.
It wasn't funny then. It's not funny now.
Yeah, and to the point where we had to build in a sort of jokey warning about it into our introductions to the movies, because it would just take a couple people to just sit there and think they can just talk to the screen the whole time and they're the most hilarious person in the world.
And none of them have been funny either. Like that happened at my last Plaza showing, and it was like
Jason versus Freddy.
and it was this guy kept making these comments. I was like, dude,
You gotta shush him, man.
yeah, you gotta shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, and he looked around to try to get like laughter from everybody, and everyone's like, but there's always that one other person next to him too that's like, oh, I can be funny too, and then they're like having this joke off.
Oh, it's so infuriating.
Yeah, it's just like,
It's like, yeah, when people who haven't been socialized properly like go out in the world and they're just like,
and it's older people now too. Like it's just like, yeah, it's like this dude was in his 30s. Like, and the guy, one of the guys that I knew was like in his like 50s. I was like, you should know better, man.
oh,
Well, we're getting off topic.
Oh, sorry.
We're
So,
infuriated.
Videosters, I
If
want-
you go and talk into a movie, John will personally come and hit you in the head with a tennis racket. Just letting you know, especially at Plaza.
that's right. Or I'll shush you and embarrass you. So, yeah, I'm wondering if I'm getting what you're trying to, if we're on the same page about video stores. So please feel free to.
Yeah, and I like where we're going with all this. Like, I feel like everything that we have and put on the table, like, I'm really fascinated with, especially with somebody who has, like, a long-standing history with it, and me looking at it from the eyes of a cinephile,
Yeah.
more or less. And I don't even like classifying myself as a cinephile. There's people out there that are, like, I mean, Aaron.
It's not a competition.
Yeah, it's not a competition, but Aaron puts me, like, buries me like 18 feet under earth. Like,
Sure.
that guy is a wealth of knowledge, and I can just sit and listen to him talk all day.
Yeah.
That's another plug for your podcast, Aaron. Behind the Slate with
I
Aaron
plug it
Strand.
too. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the nostalgia of it, and I love finding something new. And if it wasn't for video stores, which, you know, it pains me to see the death of a lot of video stores, but it you know, there's in death, there's always a little bit of life, right? Like there's always like this little bitty hope. And I think Videodrome is that hope. My next question to that is, how have you guys evolved? Because business is expanded. I mean, in this day and age, with everything being as expensive, rent and all this, and where you guys are located, you know, you can't just be making it off, you know, $5 rentals occasionally, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's gone into the evolution of Videodrome and what's created it to be a staying power of a video rental store, which is impressive enough. That deserves everything.
I mean, it's such a tough question because each of us has our own opinions. I think it's just, I don't know. I think it's like a lack of not so much good luck as a lack of bad luck. Like there hasn't been if there was a flood, like we would be out of business if we weren't able to stay open for a month at the beginning of the pandemic, in which we left our doors open and went to like a curb service sort of model for 8 months during the pandemic, because we're not the kind of business that can close our doors for a week or two and then like just be okay in a month. It's a very slim margin. So yeah, when Videodrome opened, there was, in Little Five Points, there was a tiny little video store called Blast Off Video, owned by a guy named Sam Patton, who was one of the people who worked at Movies Worth Seeing, who was considered a mentor. And he specialized in like something weird video kind of stuff, schlock, burlesque, educational films, splatter, real counterculture stuff. And then Movies We're Seeing, the other store, was more of like an art house and foreign, and classic Hollywood movies. Then it made sense that right between them, that a Videodrome that had like Hong Kong action movies, also splatter and cult movies. Matt Booth was not competing with Blockbuster then. It was just like, no, Blockbuster is just like the water that we're swimming in, and this is a specific thing. So when Movies We're Seeing, the just juggernaut video rental store that I mentioned earlier, when that went out of business in like 2011, and then Blockbuster went out of business, suddenly more and more people started asking for more different kinds of things. So it was everybody from horror freaks, completists of a certain genre, to academics looking for certain things, to our regular retired customers who've been coming in for years who want new releases. And so I'd say for the last 15 years or so, wait, that's more than 15 years. Like 15 years or so. Yeah, we've sort of had to be not all things to all people, but as close as we can. More like that's where the sort of library, the idea of being a film library. And, a library doesn't have every single book in the world, and we don't have every single movie in the world. But yeah, we had to become much more broad, so we still get brand new releases that, the day they come out, new big Hollywood movies, and keep old stuff that doesn't rent often, but needs to be there, for students or anybody researching or curious. But financially, the sort of lack of bad luck is that Videodrome, the building, was a convenience store originally, and then it was a series of failed businesses. It was just like, it was a karate studio, a neon art gallery, a poster showroom. It was several things, and they'd all kind of like Little 5 Points businesses. Like they just open and then close. And so the landlord really liked Matt and liked this idea of the video store. And he's worked with us. He's like on our side until he isn't one day. So that's just luck that hasn't been turned into condos. And also we all like work second jobs, have other hustles. And it's really just a few people that have just dedicated themselves to keeping it alive and not making much money, living in poverty. And
we're all living in poverty now. You might as well just enjoy something and live in poverty.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah. And to extend to that, like, you do all these plaza dromes and terradromes. Like, do you think that like equates into your evolution? Like, because it equates into, like, I guess you reaching out to new people.
Yeah.
Do you gather a lot of new people from these events?
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, that was definitely a huge evolution. We never thought until like the mid 2000s that we would show movies that weren't like, in our friend's backyard or whatever, but we showed movies at Java Vino, that coffee house. It's like across the street from us for a while, to like 20 people, like sort of under the radar. And then for years, it was sort of a small embarrassment when people would be like, "Oh, you guys are right down the street from that historic movie theater, the Plaza Theater. Or do you show movies there?" And we'd be like, "No, we don't know anybody there." And then when Chris Escobar bought the Plaza, he reached out to us. And thank God, because it's been such a cool it's really been the synergy between all the passionate people at Plaza and us, and it's just become this cool little, like I said, ecosystem of going to the, like you said, like getting ice cream, getting food, being able to go to see a movie and then pick one up on the way home and talk about the movie. Yeah, it's gotten more people aware of the store and it's gotten more customers in there. But we also make a little bit of, the cut of the movies.
That's good.
Yeah, so that helps.
And that probably helps a lot of the financial burden of anything. So
that and merch, especially during the pandemic, people were really nice and bought more
You guys have,
T-shirts
like,
than they needed. And
you guys have a cool design too. Like, it's the coolest logo in town. And also like you sell vinyl too. That's also, and it's always been an interesting thing. When I first went into Videodrome, I was like, oh yeah, there's a vinyl section over here and like a lot of cool stuff in it,
Yeah. Do you want to buy it? Because nobody else is.
Yeah, I need to come by and buy some. Because I mean, you always have stuff that I'm like, oh shit, like this is like marked up to high hell online. So, and like you have it at like a great price.
Hey, that's a good point, listeners. If you're into like Mondo or
just even horror movie soundtracks, like, I mean,
if you're into horror movie soundtracks and you're looking at something that came out a year or two ago that is now going for astronomical prices, it's probably just gathering dust in our bin.
I appreciate you didn't go up with the prices, which I guess it sounds like you can't, but
oh yeah, we could. No, we went the opposite route of selling them for. We stopped ordering them. It sort of hasn't. It worked out really well at first, but the interest is. Mondo changed their business model. That's the, I guess, the main horror movie distributor. Yeah, and I don't know. They just haven't been. They've just been taking up space lately, and no one seems that interested. So. But they are at normal markup, so
So anybody out there, if you're looking, you know where to find it.
Yeah.
So before we wrap all this up, so I do have two more kind of questions for you.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to lead into is we talk about life after death, right? Like, I know to sound poetic here, we talk about the death of the video rental store, the little life that you guys create. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting? We've talked about this multiple times, and I think it's important to talk about like on this show. Isn't it interesting that the younger generation seems to be more cinephile than I would ever expect, and they're the ones embracing this video rental store and coming out to the Plaza shows and seeing these. I mean, even just when Aaron showed Cleo from 5 to 7, like how many people from like college and like high schools were out at that showing, not talking either or on their phone. But
and then giving the most amazing questions in the Q&A and comments. That was incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting every time I go to Plaza and see how many people are like interacting with film and learning and educating themselves through film, which I didn't do at a young age. Mm-hmm. I didn't discover that world until like late into college, early, adulthood. And I'm still trying to catch up. Like, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin some days. But it is so fascinating to see that. Do you see that 100%. Youth at the Videodrome?
Oh my God. It's so obvious and palpable. Like, I don't know how much Letterboxd has to do with it. I kind of think a lot, but we're at the point, in the last 5 or 6 years, it's been crazy kids. And I don't know how much there is to it. How many of those young people, this is the first video store and the only video store they've ever been in. And so they're just like, holy shit, like this is like, it's all brand new to them. But the studying, like the being schooled part you're talking about is unbelievable. Like there's, 20-year-olds coming and asking for movies. I think I might've mentioned this earlier, all the time. Like, hey, do you have this obscure, 90s Japanese art movie? And the answer is either like, how do you know about that? or like, yeah, we do, but only because we like it. And I couldn't bear to get rid of it, or it hasn't rented in years. And then that'll just take off and we'll have some out of print DVD of, something. And
so amazing.
It spreads. Yeah. So absolutely. This generation of cinema enthusiasts it's unbelievable. It's like nothing, I don't think ever before. And I see articles. The Chicago Tribune just had an article about the same phenomenon in Chicago. And I feel like it's not just Atlanta.
Yeah. That's good. It's good to know because like
Yeah.
we have to like we talk about preserving that space in history. It is history. You know, art is history. And it is part of us, all of us, and it's all of us to share. And if we don't get an opportunity to share that and something that seems so dead like streaming because you're streaming by yourself at home, you're flipping through, nothing's being offered to you. You feel like it is, but nothing is offered to you. When I talk to you or I go to Plaza and I get out of that movie and someone turns to me and says, hey, you know, you like this weird art house Japanese thing, try Beyond the Infinite 2 minutes.
Right,
and
right.
then I go home and watch it and it's like one of my favorite films of all time. And
Hell
it's like,
yeah.
and I feel like we can't lose that.
Yeah. It's amazing that it's come back to this sort of person to person, mouth to mouth, you know,
And it's hope, right? It's like how we share
Yeah.
our stories. It's the same thing as it's the tale as old as time. Stories are meant to be shared from generation to generation. It's what connects us to everybody. It connects us to not only our family, our friends, but everyone across the world at one time. And we have to preserve that. So everybody go to Videodrome, you know, buy their merch, buy their old vinyls. Even if you don't have a vinyl player, that's what you need to do. Go to Plaza, go to Terra. Support these local theaters. It's important to keep all that alive.
and it's so much fun. I know people that form friendships from going to these things, like meaningful friendships, and the amount of dialogue that it's created just among enthusiasts and
Hey, that's
friends
what-
has been incredible.
That's why you're on this show. Like we met through
Leif.
all this.
Yeah,
And Leif,
exactly.
Leif, if you're out there.
We love you, Leaf.
Yeah. So, and then last question I have, this is more of a fun question. What's the weirdest thing you've ever rented from a video store? The weirdest movie or whatever that maybe got it recommended or maybe you just ended up watching?
Man, I'm going to just think of ones that stuck with me. I remember Sam Patton, who owned Blast Off Video, telling me I had to watch a movie called Blood Freak,
Okay.
which is an indescribable, it might be Christian, but it's about a biker, a 70s movie about a good-looking, hunky biker who has a little problem with drugs. But he works on a turkey farm, and there's some conspiracy involving giving the turkeys heroin so that instead of shooting up junkies are eating turkey instead. But it has a Christian moral at the end or something. And it's, total insanity.
That's back in the 70s, too, where they had all their back from Vietnam movies, too, right?
Right, yeah.
Oh, man. I'm going to put that on my list.
Yeah, it has a talking head. It keeps awkwardly cutting to. It's one of those movies that anytime it gets any momentum, it just cuts back to this like guy behind a desk. Like it's just self-sabotaging. Amazing.
We're going to have to add Blood Freak to our queue.
Yeah.
Everybody back home.
It's incredible.
Awesome. Well, John, before we get out of here, tell us a little bit more what Videodrome's going to do in the future.
Yeah, coming up in the next few months, we'll continue showing movies on the third Thursdays of the month at the Plaza and the first Tuesdays of the month at Terra. Our next Terradrome series will be the director Nobuhiko Obayashi, the director of House, 3 of his movies from around that same time that have not been available in the U.S. until now.
Heck yeah.
And we're going to have another VHS market, I think, in March or April. I don't know if you've been to those, but we basically just turned the Plaza Theater's lobby into a flea market of different VHS sellers and related. And then we show like a movie after all that. So it's like an afternoon into the evening thing. The VHS market will be March 30th. And I think we'll be showing the J-horror movie that's a really popular one with customers called Noroi.
Yeah.
The Curse.
I love Noroi. That would be fun to catch on the big screen, too.
Yeah, and it's been restored.
Yeah, I just watched the restoration of it, and it was well done. Like,
Oh,
I
cool.
really enjoyed the restoration of it.
Oh, right on. And then, so we'll have the Obayashi movies coming up, and then we're doing some things with our friend and ex-employee Millie DeChirico. She's going to bring hopefully some Hollywood directors. And then, I don't know, we've been also trying to collaborate more and more with boutique labels like Fun City Editions and, some of these Vinegar Syndrome under the OCN label. And these are just people we've reached out to who we're just fellow fans with. And so, yeah, regular screenings. And here now, the best way to follow us, or the best way to figure out what we're doing, is to look at our Instagram account. It's just Videodrome_ATL.
Perfect place to keep up with everything that's going on. John, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and giving us some hope and continuing the life after death, right?
That's right.
That is important. John is an amazing personality. Catch him at Videodrome. He will lead you in the right direction if you don't know what to watch or if you're just looking to get into a certain genre of film.
If I'm not busy.
If he's not busy.
We're also understaffed. So.
Yeah. If he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off, just wait. But him and his crew over there do a phenomenal job. The movies that Videodrome shows at Plazadrome, incredible. Come out, catch those, talk to them, support local theaters, support the local arts. It's very important, especially in a time like this. It keeps us all together. John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
This has been great.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you can catch him on Instagram, and we'll see you next time.